A little boy admires Heim dolls. Those dolls are very beautiful for him. He likes them so much that he wanted to create and design one. She is happy making her dolls until one day a childhood friend tells her that her tastes are strange and that she is disgusted. Since that day he had hidden his taste for dolls. The years had passed, and he is quite a young teenager. He still likes dolls. The protagonist is called Goyo. He lives with his grandfather. The grandfather was a professional teacher capable of creating Heim dolls. The grandfather worries about his grandson because he always saw him in the creation of the dolls, and he had never seen him with friends, but Goyo lies to him that he has many friends in high school. As she walks to school, she realizes that she didn't really have any friends and was spending all her time with the Heim dolls. Until one day everything will change for him. The most popular girl in the class will fall on his desk. She apologizes to him in an affectionate way and leaves. This girl is called Marin. She is not afraid to show all her likes and thoughts, in addition to having multiple friends. Goyo feels a bit envious towards her, because he wasn't like that. Some classmates had asked Goyo for a favor to clean the classroom. Goyo accepted without any problems. While she was cleaning, Marin appeared. She is surprised to see him. She was supposed to clean with another boy. Goyo tells her that he couldn't refuse a favor. She gets angry with him for not having his own criteria, and gives him advice that he will not forget, that he has to say what he feels to help himself. In the days that followed, he couldn't forget the words that girl had said to him, remembering his past in which he was despised. The sewing machine he was working with had broken down, and he had nothing to work with. He didn't want to lose practice, so he went to school and started using the machines that the sewing club had. When Maureen suddenly arrives, Goyo thinks that Maureen is going to despise him for his love of dolls, but it was the opposite. She is excited that Goyo knew how to use the sewing machine. Goyo explains that he had a lot of experience sewing outfits for the Heim dolls. Maureen asks if he knows how to sew clothes. Goyo says yes, albeit on a small scale. When Marin suddenly begins to take off her clothes, Ella puts on a suit, says she made it herself to look like her favorite character, and asks for his opinion. Goyo tells him that they are nothing alike. Maureen knows this because he had never made a suit before. She explains that she wants to cosplay and pay homage to her favorite characters. She explains that she doesn't know how to make a dress. He takes Goyo by the hand and asks him to make him a cosplay costume. Maureen tells him that he will accept if he doesn't want to do it. He remembers that this girl had given him great advice, and he admired Marin's way of being. He decides to accept. Marin jumps for joy. Marin explains that she wants to become a girl named Shizuku. She starts talking about how pretty Shizuku is and how she met her. Shizuku was an eroge video game person, that is, one of those hot games. Marin explains that it was based on a book that explained how to make a cosplay. Marin wants to start the costume as soon as possible, but Goyo tells her that it's late and they'll do it another day. The next day someone knocks on the door. It was the Marine girl. She explains that she couldn't wait any longer and decided to come to his house. She had found him thanks to the internet. She gives him a present and goes into her house. She goes into Goyo's room as if it were her house. Goyo has no choice but to accept this girl. Marin is super sexy and Goyo can't help but get nervous. She tells him that it's time to start. To make a good cosplay costume, first you have to have the exact measurements. Marin takes off her clothes. She's wearing a cute bathing suit. Goyo feels very hot. He had promised him that he would help Marin in the design of the cosplay costume. He decides to take all his activities seriously and concentrate on measuring Marin's body. After a good time, Goyo finishes measuring Marin's body, but in the end he couldn't stop his worm from standing up. Goyo already had the correct measurements for Marin. It was time for Marin to go home. She leaves the erotic games to Goyo so that he learns to see how the suits are designed. Later that night, Goyo focused on the erotic video game. Grandpa was surprised to see him. Goyo is very excited about what happened the day before. The most popular girl in school had come to his house. Remembering those scenes, he gives himself a quick handjob. At Goyo High School, he realizes that Marin is still as popular as ever, so he decides to ignore her so as not to attract her attention while hiding from Marin, but the girl approaches him and begins to give him a talk. Marin's friends arrive and they also start talking to Goyo. The friends leave so as not to disturb Goyo. The other students are jealous that Marin is talking so casually to Goyo. Goyo decides not to talk to Marin anymore. During the day Marin wants to talk to Goyo, but he runs away from her. Finishing classes, he kept ignoring Marin, but behind him she appeared very angry. She asks him why he ignored her. Goyo says that he doesn't deserve her to talk to him. She says that he shouldn't talk nonsense. She considers him a friend, and that was the only thing that mattered. Marin drags the protagonist to go with her to a store. The two had arrived at a store. Goyo, as a simp, had made some drawings with the design of the cosplay costume. Marin is surprised with the tremendous design. The time has come to choose a fabric for the costume that will be used in the cosplay. Marin fully trusts Goyo and gives him the necessary money to buy this fabric and to buy everything necessary for the accessories. They buy the fabric, the wigs, and even some very sexy stockings for Marin. It was already dark and they both want to go home. Marin shows her how other people cosplay too and tells her how cute they look. Goyo tells him that he likes what he sees, but that the word cute had been saved for his Heimdalls. Marin tells him that she is very grateful to him for having heard about his tastes. She was very grateful to Goyo. Since it was already late, Marin has to go home, but without first mentioning that the event where she needs to wear the cosplay is in 2 weeks. Goyo says that 2 weeks is a very short time, and he worries a lot. He had promised Marin that he would make the cosplay costume for her, but now he had to make the costume in 2 weeks, and it was very little time. Arriving home, his grandfather welcomes him, but since he was an elderly person, he had sprained his back. Obviously Goyo has to take his grandfather to the emergency room. When he leaves the hospital his grandfather needs to rest, so Goyo and his cousin will have to take care of him. At school, Goyo tells Marin that his grandfather is very sick. Marin wants to help with something, but Goyo tells her it's not necessary. After sharing their numbers, they find out that they have to take their high school exams. Goyo had to study for his exams, he had to take care of his sick grandfather, and he had to take care of his grandfather's doll business. On top of all that, he had promised to make Marin's cosplay costume, and time was running out. He tries his best to keep up with work, but one night he wakes up to find he hasn't slept in days. He thinks that everything he is doing is half done, and that he would not achieve anything in life. He had entered an existential crisis. When he's about to give up, he remembers that he promised Marin he'd make the cosplay suit for him, and like a good simp, he wakes up motivated and wanting to keep working and never give up. The next day he finally finished it. Marin comes to see the cosplay costume. Goyo had spent every night working on the cosplay and attending to his other activities at the institute and taking care of his grandfather. Marin is surprised by the work that Goyo had done, but the 2-week limit was just a meeting that was constantly happening and was not a major event. She apologizes to Goyo for not being more clear in her words. Goyo is happy because there is still time. Marin is sad because she couldn't imagine what Goyo had to go through to make his cosplay costume, crying for the suffering that Goyo had to cross. Goyo is more optimistic and tells him to try on the suit since it's done. Marin wipes away her tears and gets ready to try on the costume. She wants to make a proper cosplay, so she decides to put on makeup. Goyo says it looks good. They need some false eyelashes and Goyo had some lying around. Since he put them on his Heimdalls, Goyo starts talking about Heimdalls in such a cheerful way that he becomes very happy. Marin sees Goyo's smile and falls in love with him. After a good fan service, Marin puts on the cosplay outfit. When Goyo goes to see her, he realizes that she looks a lot like Shizuko. This story will continue.